Knowles on the News. Susan Knowles.
So how many of you dared watch the town hall meeting that happened earlier this week? I have to be honest with you. I couldn't stand the thoughts of watching another town hall meeting, another debate, another discussion, whatever the case may be, on politics this week. I've almost had enough. It's not getting any better. It's just getting more, bizarre. This whole election has been one of those elections that I think will go down in history as just, embarrassing is one word that comes out for me. Unusual, bizarre. You have people like Kasich that everybody knows why he's still in. I mean, if you don't know, you can only imagine why he's still in. He has no chance of becoming the president of the United States. Even if he were somehow to finagle his way into the nomination for the GOP, he's not going to be president. Hillary would knock him out in a second because of the fact nobody knows who John Kasich is. To be honest with you, I didn't know who John Kasich was. I mean, I've heard his name or whatever before, but I didn't even know him. I don't even know how he got in to this election cycle, to be honest with you, and why he's still here, other than the fact that he's taking George Soros money, and they're obviously using him, and he's willing to be used, probably talking to him about, John, if you just stay in and you get Trump out, then we'll make you president, like we did Obama, right? Because I think Obama, wasn't he taking George Soros money? But it's something that the media really didn't talk about, so we can only speculate. But I don't want to hear any more arguments between the candidates and about the candidates' wives or anything else. And I couldn't bear last night turning it on and hearing John Kasich talk about anything. I don't care if he's reading his grocery list. I just can't bear looking at the guy anymore, knowing what he's doing, knowing that he's trying to sort of upend the election because of the fact that he's getting paid money to do so. Everybody wants to, now it seems, to go to a brokered convention. And when I say everybody, I'm talking about the RNC and people involved in the political process want to go there and have a brokered convention. And what are they going to do? Nominate Paul Ryan at that time and say, he's the guy that ought to be our president. And Paul Ryan, of course, has said, I wouldn't even consider it, which means he's probably right there waiting. He's probably got his suit pressed and, bags packed and whatever. Because anything that the GOP says they don't want to do is what they do want to do. It's just the world of opposites that we find ourselves in these days. So I didn't want to look at one more opportunity for the same stuff to be talked about. I mean, we could have ended these debates in the town halls weeks ago. Nothing new has come out of it after the third week. We could have just stopped it right there. And why the Democrats are having their debates ongoing and talking about what's happening, I don't understand that either. Bernie Sanders, the only way that Bernie is going to have a shot is if Hillary Clinton is indicted and arrested. Because otherwise, even if she's indicted, her supporters are going to vote for her. She could become president anyway. And we had a politician in California like that, indicted on something. And I believe he won. At least he won in his own county, if nothing else. And I can't remember the guy's name. I try to forget those things because honestly, those type of things are just so embarrassing. It shows you how disconnected people are from the political process. And of course, yes, he was a Democrat. That's one of the reasons I don't concern myself with exactly who he was. I know who he was, progressive Democrat. That's all I need to know. I don't vote that way, so I don't need to know that. But Hillary she's going to get the nomination. She's going to be the nominee. Bernie's going to, who knows, maybe be her right-hand man. I have no idea. I mean, there's been talk, actually, that Al Franken should be the vice president for Hillary Clinton. Why not? All we need is one more person, and we can have the Three Stooges. Why not? Anything is possible in this election. It's, again, the most bizarre, crazy election of anybody's lifetime. I can't think of one that stoops so low as this election process. And then I have to ask people who are Trump supporters. You know, one of the things that has been said, bantered around for quite some time is, well, if Trump doesn't get the nomination, if we go in and it's a brokered deal, we're just going to go and have him run independent. Okay, you know, he has kind of said that all along, but he did make a promise to the RNC that he wouldn't do that, but we all know that he will change his mind if that occurs, and he'll run as an independent party. And I guess my question is to people who support Trump, I mean, I would imagine that you're okay with that, with him running independent if he has to, and you're looking at it as if they steal the nomination away from him, he has the right, I guess, in your opinion, to go over to the independent party. So would you feel the same way then if Ted Cruz did that? What would your opinion be in that instance? Would it be okay for Trump but not okay for Ted Cruz because it goes against what you hope will happen? And that is having Donald Trump come in and being this non-politician who changes things around. You wouldn't want that not to happen, right? So you wouldn't want somebody coming in and going over to an independent party and losing the votes for you. So I guess you have to ask yourself, if you're okay with Trump doing it, why wouldn't you be okay with Cruz doing it? And shouldn't all parties be treated the same? And I'll have to tell you, I know the answer. You're not going to want Cruz to go as independent third party. You would want him and his supporters to back Donald Trump. So we're not, I don't know. It doesn't make sense other than the fact that, yes, you want Trump to win. I get that. But it doesn't make sense to treat one party differently than the other. And I'm concerned for people who support Donald Trump that even if Trump gets the nomination, I don't know how you're going to woo over the Cruz supporters, because this has been sort of an ugly way of this time of Republicans on the Donald Trump side and Republicans on Ted Cruz side fighting each other endlessly in social media. And it's been nasty. I have seen some of the comments. It's been nasty. And people are very intolerant of anything that doesn't speak to supporting Donald Trump 110%. And I get that. You are very enthusiastic about your candidate. I get that. That's a good thing. But when the supporters for the other people, the Marco Rubio people, hopefully John Kasich people soon, and the Cruz people, you've got to somehow bring those people around if Donald Trump gets the nomination. Because I'll tell you, the people that I've spoken with, they would just as soon write in Ted Cruz or stay at home. And that's not going to bode well for the election. We're going to get Hillary Clinton as president. And I know you say, well, we don't need the Ted Cruz supporters. Yeah, I think you do. I really think you do. And you have to rethink that and how you talk to people. Because it would be so much better if you would try to, like I said, woo people over with Donald Trump supporters, woo those people over from Ted Cruz supporters, and convince them that Donald Trump is the way to go. And the way to not convince them that Donald Trump is the way to go is to be nasty, to be attacking, to block these people, et cetera, et cetera. That's just not going to work. It just won't. And if you believe any of the polls, Donald Trump right now has a real problem with female voters. And of course, not all of them, but a large majority of them. Right now, supposedly the number is 70% of female voters don't like Donald Trump. And they say they're not going to vote for him. Now, let's just give or take a few. Let's say it's 60%. That's still a huge number. And the female voters are the ones that voted Obama in. You know, the females liked Obama, they liked Clinton, and so they went out and they voted them in. We can't afford to tick off that huge of a number of voters, whether they're male, female, Cruz supporters, or anybody else. So I think it's time before we get down to the convention that the Trump supporters and Trump campaign ought to figure out how do we bring things around. And it's not helping right now to have what happened to the reporter, the alleged accusations. I mean, I don't know what happened. I really don't. I've seen some first garbled little video that came out in the very beginning, so I have no idea. I wasn't there. And that's going to have to be something that is decided in a court of law or settled out of court, whatever the case may be. But the fact that the accusations are there is harmful. Just like the accusations that came out about Ted Cruz, while they have not been proven to be true, are nonetheless harmful. So once again, we have all of these side distractions that we need to do something about. Because while we're having so much infighting in the GOP and the GOP supporters, it doesn't seem to be a problem on the Democrat side. They're just all gung-ho. They'll go with whoever they have to. I mean, I've seen so many signs for Bernie Sanders, and of course it's California, so you can expect that. But my gosh. So it's not going to be difficult to convince people in the Democratic Party to vote for Hillary or Bernie. They'll be glad to do either one. Doesn't really matter. Women seem to love Hillary, and the young people seem to love Bernie. So go figure. How we got to this point, once again, this election is bizarre. I never thought that we would get to this point. I mean, I know Hillary. You know, this election has been promised to her for how long? You know, she had to sit out and wait her turn after Obama when it looked like she wasn't going to get the nomination there. And once again, you know, in the beginning it was, oh, I hate Obama. And then it was, oh, he's such a great guy. And even Bill hated Obama in the beginning when it was against Hilly Bear. And then comes out in the end, oh, Obama, he's so great. And now we're back to, I hate Obama. Because these people, they just do whatever the wind blows, whatever they have to do to win. Truth doesn't matter. And I think for a lot of people, it's starting to be truth doesn't matter. And that is a really scary point that we have come to in this country. When truth stops mattering, when character stops mattering, we have a real moral problem. And let's face it, we've had a moral issues, moral problems for quite a long time. Mostly when you're talking about young people. And we've been willing to ignore those. We've been willing to not call them what they are. Meaning whatever the behavior is. We've been willing to say, that's just young people. We'll just look the other way. When, as you know, in the history of time, all throughout history, whenever young people did something that the older people didn't feel was appropriate, they would talk about it. And they would talk about how shameful it is or how wrong it is or whatever. And so this generation, it's more like, they can do whatever they want. It's okay. Everybody should be allowed to do whatever. So we have no more standards in a lot of respects that we can teach our children or their children's children. And believe me, if the children you're raising don't get any moral standards, their children aren't going to have any either, for the most part. There may be one or two exceptions, but it's not going to be a whole generation of people raised with moral standards. I think we are willing these days to kind of, again, look the other way, lower our standards, and just sort of chalk it up as, oh, well, that's just the way it is. Well, when are we going to stop doing that? When are we going to say no longer will we accept these things? And we're going to call it like it is. We're going to call people who wear their pants down below their butts as something that is odd, something that is unacceptable, socially unacceptable, too revealing, whatever you want to call it. And women who wear their dresses too high or their chest bared. What I mean, we either are going to have to change the standards, and maybe that's where we're at. We've just changed the standards for that to be acceptable, or we're going to have to call it out and say, no, it's not acceptable. I don't want my children dressing like that. I don't want my children feeling that's okay, or cussing on TV, sex on TV, whatever the topic is. We've got to get back to it at some point. Someone saying these are the standards. Right now, we don't want people to be able to, we don't want to have anyone who's going to set the standards. We don't want to have leadership. We just want to do whatever feels good. I think they did that in the 60s, and I don't think it worked too well. Look what came out of that. Bill Ayers, all of those people. Hillary. When you don't have standards, when you don't have guidelines for people to follow, then things they run amok. And, that's, children need structure. We're not children as adults, but we need structure, and we need to teach our children structure. Right now, I don't think we have structure. I really don't. All you have to do is kind of look on the videos on what's posted on social media to see everybody on there is kind of run amok. They do whatever. They tape, they film whatever going on. They don't listen to the police very much anymore. Police are getting shot right and left, and it's just kind of everything is run amok. And a lot of people just say, well, that's what the police deserve because they've been brutalizing people for quite some time, and so, oh well. I mean, is that the kind of world that you want to live in? Is that really what you want for your society to be? And as we continue down the road where there's no leadership, no structure, no moral standards, we're just going further and further away and into lawlessness. And maybe you just think that, oh, well, you're just exaggerating. You're making too big of a deal out of it. I don't think so. Just look back in history where we were and where we are right now. Not really a great place in a lot of respects when it comes to standards, morals, leadership, following the Bible, biblical principles. I mean, how many people today say, I don't believe in the Bible? I mean, a lot of millennials don't believe in the Bible, believe it's fairy tale. A lot of people don't believe in God. And then on the other side that you have a lot of people coming back to God, which is a great thing. But then more and more Christian persecution. Something's wrong. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that something is wrong. And we have to do something about it, or it just goes farther and farther down the wrong path that we don't want to go down. Now, I wanted to get back to the election and the election cycle. We have Marco Rubio, who, of course, as you may recall, suspended his campaign at the GOP. And everybody just thought, well, since he doesn't really care that much about Donald Trump, he's just going to he'll wait until he gets to the convention in Cleveland in July, and he'll just at that point give Ted Cruz his candidates. And I think Rubio has about 172 right now. Who knows? That may be what we see, or maybe Rubio will say, you know what, John Kasich, he's so great. Maybe I should give him all of my delegates. I think I read something the other day where Kasich's like, I just want Donald Trump and Ted Cruz to combine all of their delegates and get behind me. Wow. Kasich has turned out to be, in my opinion, a lot like Jeb Bush. He's just kind of, out there, doesn't realize the damage he's doing to himself, his family, or maybe he does and doesn't care. I don't know. But the stuff that comes out of his mouth, the stuff that he maybe convinces himself is true, is just sometimes more than you can take. I mean, seriously, you really feel that way. Whew. It's an article out today that Rubio makes unprecedented bid to keep his delegates for the contested convention. And I guess what he's trying to do, he's trying to say, I didn't quit. I just suspended my campaign, and so I want to keep all my delegates. And he's personally asking state parties in 21 states and territories to refrain from releasing in any of his 172 delegates he won while campaigning this year. He sent a signed letter to the chair of the Alaska Republican Party requesting that the 5 delegates he won in that state remain bound to vote for Rubio at the Republican National Convention. And he copied a letter to the national chairman, and he sent the same request to all 21 states. And Alaska has said, okay, we'll grant you your request. And we see people starting to now, change definitions of things. So in the past, suspended meant that you dropped out. And so then here comes this request, and then the Alaska saying, "Oh well, we used to think that meant that you dropped out, but I guess now we're going to have to look at it a little differently. So let's just go ahead, change definitions. So you don't have to change a word; just change the meaning of a word and get what you want." So Rubio, who knows what he's really trying to do, but I think what it looks like he's trying to do is that if Trump fails to win a majority of delegates during the primaries, then basically Rubio could withhold his delegates and decide whether he wants to keep them himself, give them to Cruz, whatever he wants to do. I don't know. It seems funny to me because if you wanted to stop Donald Trump, why not just give all of your delegates right now, 172 of them, hand them over to Cruz? What's the big deal? Why? And maybe I'm looking at this wrong. I mean, correct me if you think there's another possibility here. But why not just hand them over now? I mean, is Marco Rubio holding out and thinking, hey, if I can just hold out, we get to the convention, maybe nobody wins the total nomination, I can just hang on in there, and maybe at the brokered convention they'll elect me to be the nominee. Maybe that's what he thinks is going to happen. I don't know. Again, nothing in this election cycle really makes all that much sense. Obviously, we're not united. The party, I've never seen them more far apart in trying to decide anything. I mean, I know that some people find similarities between now and when Reagan became president. Maybe that's a possibility. I don't know. I just don't remember this type of stuff with Reagan. I really don't. Not this bad. And it doesn't seem to get any better. So we'll have to just wait and see. Again, I would really suggest that the GOP try to find a way to unite its supporters all together under one person, whoever that person is. And if it happens to be Donald Trump, then Donald Trump, I really would suggest that somehow you bring this all around and pick up those supporters and pick up the female vote, because I really think that you're going to need it, no matter how popular your supporters think that you are, no matter how popular you think you are. Every vote counts against Hillary Clinton. And without those votes, it's going to be, I think, a real uphill battle for you. Now, to other news that is, this is probably one of the worst cases that I've ever heard, and it's, oh my gosh. There's a dad who murdered his kids, and he's going to be executed in Dallas, Texas on Wednesday. And I say, good riddance. Because what he did was so unthinkable, so disgusting. And this happened back in 2001, and this scumbag is still here, some 15 years later. But his daughters are dead. He didn't deserve, in my opinion, to be here 1 second longer. let alone 15 years. One of his daughters was named Liberty, and she wanted to be a ballerina. His other daughter was named Faith, and they said she was smart and made people laugh. The girls were ages 6 and 9 when they were visiting their father, John Battaglia, in his apartment near downtown Dallas. And I guess what happened was they were on the phone talking to their mother, Mary Jean Pearl. And the mom is listening to what's happening, and she hears Faith, the little girl, say, "No, Daddy, please don't do it." And then the mom says, "I heard gunfire," and I hear him yell, "Merry effing Christmas." And the evidence showed that this man, this despicable human being, shot each of his daughters 6 times. And the mom rushed to the apartment and paced back and forth until the police entered, and they, of course, came back out and told her, "Your children are dead." And they talked with her, the mom, recently on ABC News, and she talked about that moment and hearing what was happening on the other end of the phone, knowing that there was nothing that she could do. And she said it's the most empty feeling you could ever have in your life. They are everything. All your hopes and dreams, everything is gone. Now, Battaglia, the father who killed the daughters, was arrested hours later outside a tattoo parlor where he had just had 2 roses. Isn't that great? One for each girl inked on his arm. What a piece of human scum. And before his arrest, he left this chilling message on his daughter's answering machine. I mean, this guy, I don't know of anything lower. I mean, really, I'm trying to think about this as I talk about it. What would be lower than this person? Is he really a human being? I don't know. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. I would say no, based on what he did. But he left a chilling message on his daughter's answering machine that said, "Good night, my little babies. I hope you're resting in a different place." Well, you're going to be resting in a different place, Mr. Battaglia, and it's not going to be where your daughters are. I'm pretty sure about that. They said there had been a long history of domestic violence between he and his wife, but no one thought he would kill the children, so he was allowed to have unsupervised visits. Yeah. He's violent against his wife, but the children are safe. And of course, this was 2001. We have to look at it as a long time ago. But anybody out there, whether you're male or female, if you have a spouse or a partner and children, and your spouse or partner is committing domestic violence against you, you should request from the courts supervised visits with that person and your children. You must protect your children. You may be denied, the court may deny you that, but you at least have to try. Because if you find a person who has violent tendencies like that, then most likely at some point he or she may take it out on the children. Now it says the murders sent shockwaves through the community. Lawmakers were outraged and the law was changed. It is now mandatory for judges to ask about a history of violence during divorce proceedings. And that's probably true in Texas, and it's not true everywhere else, and that's why you have to be the advocate for your children. It says here, in a lot of cases, it was not brought up that there had been domestic violence in the relationship that was dissolving, or there had been some danger to the child. And this is the director of the family place, which offers assistance to abused spouses. Now, Battaglia is 60. He's scheduled to die by lethal injection on Wednesday in Huntsville. So I don't know. Huntsville, Alabama? I don't know. I know this was in Texas, but maybe there's a Huntsville, Texas, too. Texas is a big state. For all of you in Texas, you know that, right? So it says, after the little girls were slain, the family place opened Faith and Liberty's Place, where parental visits are supervised by armed, off-duty police officers. It's also a place where estranged parents can exchange children safely. I'm certain Faith and Liberty's Place has helped prevent children from being kidnapped, children being harmed. It's really, really scary because in a lot of these places, even in supervised visitation and the places where they drop off kids, I think it's a great idea that they do have off-duty and armed individuals there. I know in a lot of places, a lot of states, they're not armed. And you have parents coming in there trying to kill their own children or kidnap their own children. I mean, it's something that I think, again, is unfortunately on the rise, and people have to be more aware of what's going on. And I say for this man, goodbye. Goodbye. Obviously, the courts did not find him mentally incompetent to stand trial. I don't care what his reasons were. Maybe he just didn't want the wife to have the children. I mean, how selfish is that? To do an act like that and to take two precious children out of this world. So I don't know that there'll be that many tears shed for this monster. Turning to other news. Now, haven't we heard for how many years? Almost 7, 8? That the economy is great. It's turning around. The world's wonderful. America's back on track. I think this came from the Obama administration, if I'm not mistaken. So wonderful. I mean, we've got jobs coming out the eyeballs, and things couldn't be better. Well, tell that to Boeing. Boeing just announced that it's cutting 4,000 jobs. No big deal, right? Just 4,000 jobs, that's all. It's going to reduce costs as it battles rival Airbus and softer demand for aircraft. And they're hoping to be able to achieve the job reductions equal to about 2% of its worldwide staff through normal attrition, voluntary buyouts, and leaving open positions unfilled. And they're only going to use the involuntary layoffs if they have to. It said it would cut deliveries by about 20 commercial jets in 2016, although it said that reduction was due to a transition from the 737, its best-selling jet, to the 737 MAX, a new version of that plane. Also has slashed production of some of its older models, including the 777 and the iconic 747. Now, I don't know, I didn't hear about this, and maybe you didn't either, but Boeing has been trimming staff for several years, including 13,000 jobs since the end of 2012. 2012. Wasn't that the second term of Obama when it started? According to the company filings, and also it's had 161,400 jobs at the end of last year. So I guess all isn't so well in the economy. But again, it's who you believe, who you want to hear, and what story you want to believe. There are a lot of people that they'll believe anything that they hear, anything at all, or if they don't believe it, they'll just kind of make it up because it helps them sleep better. I mean, I heard something today that said with the Zika virus, and you know what that is. It's a virus, I believe it's caused by mosquitoes, and that it will supposedly cause birth defects, which makes the baby's head very small when it's born. I heard that there were a number of people that haven't even heard about the Zika virus, and it's been in the news. It's of course something on the news because it's something they want you to hear. So a lot of people still don't know about the Zika virus. So that means that a lot of children and unborn children are being put at risk. And for those who do know about the Zika virus, there are people who believe that there is a vaccine that will cause no problems and the babies will have no deformities. And that's just not true. So again, I think we have to look and see what we're being fed and look and see what we're not being told. That right there is where the real news is. That's the real importance. But if a lot of people know about it, then the government's doing a really good job of feeding you the information they want you to have. But I think so many people these days have just turned off the TV, turned off the radio, turned off everything. They don't want to know. It's almost easier to just not know and to go through life that way. I talk to a number of people who say, I've gotten off of social media. I don't watch TV. I don't watch the news anymore. I think there's a lot of hopelessness in a lot of individuals. They just feel that why bother, because there's nothing that I can do about it anyway. And sometimes, in a certain extent, they're right. You don't have control over things. God does, not us. But also, I don't think that we are to shut down and just totally have a hands-off approach on things, because if there is a chance of doing anything, it certainly won't be done because we won't be doing anything. I think sometimes you do have to listen to the news in moderation, because listening to the news and being on social media sometimes is not good for your health. As somebody who reads a lot on the news and is on social media a lot, I know there's some days I have to just unplug because it's way too much. I don't do it on a everyday basis, though. Again, I think a lot of people have done it on an everyday basis and have just tuned out. And the most important thing is, what color shirt do I wear today? So don't go there, all right? We still need you very desperately here. So the other day I saw a video and heard some things on the video that are just, I don't know, make your head spin. One of those things where you're like, really, did I just hear what I thought I heard? Now, these are all allegations. I mean, just point that out in the very beginning. These are allegations. There was a video that somebody took. Obviously, it looks like they took it with their cell phone. They're standing sort of on the stairs, and they're looking down at this, a black woman, another black person. I cannot tell if that's a black woman or a black man standing near her, and this one little white guy who has dreadlocks. And he looks like your typical little guy with dreadlocks. He talks kind of like, well, come on, that type of thing. He's just, he's, let's just say he has freestyle and everything, all right? But anyway, he's standing there. He's just trying to go to class, minding his own business. And this black woman in the video stops him and says, well, hey, why do you have dreadlocks? He's like, what? He's like, what's wrong with my dreadlocks? And she says, you're appropriating my culture. Appropriating my culture. Now, this is at San Francisco State University, so that explains a lot. But you're appropriating my culture. And he's like, so if, and I'm not getting all these words correct. You'll have to go look up the video and watch it yourself. But basically, he's like, what do you mean I'm appropriating your culture? I can wear dreadlocks if I want to. And besides that, the dreadlocks started from Egypt. And she's like, well, you're not Egyptian. And he's like, well, you're not either. So he starts to try to go, and she grabs a hold of him to prevent him to go, and he's like, hey, let go of me. This isn't cool. And so she pulls him around and finally lets go of him, and he sort of moves on to leave the area. And she notices, oh, wait a minute, somebody's filming me. Now, I'm sure she's filmed about 100 conversations herself. If she has that attitude and she's approaching people, random people, and pulling them aside because she doesn't like the fact that they're appropriating her culture. I don't know what culture she was representing, because the clothes that she had on looked like everybody else's clothes that you could buy at, I don't know, Macy's, other stores like that. So I don't know what culture she was representing. Looked like other people's clothes that I had seen, including my own. But she notices that she's being filmed, and she's like, hey, why are you filming this? So now this guy's going to take the wrath that she couldn't give on this little white guy that left. So he's like, well, just for everybody's safety. And she's like, oh, and she grabs the phone, and basically they have to stop filming. So not only has she potentially committed an assault and battery on this little white kid, and I say little white kid, he's probably, I don't know, 20-some years old. again, just minding his own business. He's got dreadlocks. So what? Minding his own business, going to class, accosted by this woman who's accusing him of appropriating her culture. Doesn't that sound like Black Lives Matter to you? I mean, it does to me. This is a new phrases, new terminology, new ways to accost people and make their lives a living hell because you happen not to agree with how they look. I guess if, what was it, Bo Derek? If Bo Derek were walking down the hallway with her cornrows, I guess this woman would have stopped her for that as well. And then Bo could have said, hey, I know somebody who's a filmmaker. You want to be in the next film? Oh, yes, and I love your cornrows. I'm sure that would have been more likely the case for her. But anyway, the university police, in the beginning, I guess, there was an assumption that this woman was an employee of San Francisco State University. They've since found out, no, she's just a student. She's one of those Black Lives Matter students probably, or at least somebody who believes in their philosophy and attitude. It could be somebody else, but I'm guessing it's BLM. It sounds like other things that have been talked about at different universities. This one's a new kind of slant on some things, but it's basically the same type of information. So if again, I keep telling parents, why are you sending your kids to places where this is condoned, where people are like that? Why not start sending people to either not sending them to college at all? I mean, there's no shame in not going to college and going to a technical school or learning how to be a chef or an artist or anything else that your heart desires. That doesn't necessarily have to mean that you go to a 4-year college. There's no reason that you should do that unless you really intend to get something out of that. It's a stigma maybe in the past that people used to think that way, but it's no longer that way. Right now, I mean, you go to a 4-year college, you're probably not going to get a job afterwards anyway. And even if you go and get your master's, you're not guaranteed a job. So why not go and do something that you can get a job? I mean, a lot of people, plumbers, make great money. People who are EMTs, people going to the police academy, the fire academy, whatever. You don't have to go to college unless that's what you really want to do. So why, parents, spend your money sending your kids someplace where they can be indoctrinated with BS, like what this woman allegedly said and did to this guy who's just a student at the college or at the university just like her, who has every right to have dreadlocks, not have dreadlocks, wear a skirt or a headband, whatever the case may be. If that's what he wants to do, and he's not hurting anybody else, and you may not like it, but he has the right to do that. Just like the black woman who approached him has a right to do what she wants to do, except you don't have a right to grab people and to give them your unwanted opinion if they don't want to hear it. Things are just way out of hand because, again, people watch videos and they see people who are resisting arrest or not handing over a driver's license to a police officer when they're asked, whatever the case may be, and they think, oh, well, I'm just going to do that. I know my rights. Well, unfortunately, you don't know your rights. If you did know your rights, you wouldn't put your hands on people and you wouldn't bother other individuals who are trying to live their lives free of being harassed by you. Now, turning from San Francisco to another crazy part of the country, New York City. Oh, my gosh. So the New York City Council has holding a hearing on regulating costumed characters. Does that include the mayor there and the governor? Okay, I guess they're not real costumed characters. But anyway. It says the costume characters, the naked painted ladies, and bus tour ticket sellers who have made all of Times Square's their stomping grounds could be restricted to specific zones if the city council gets their way. They're holding a hearing that would allow the city's Department of Transportation to create rules and regulations for pedestrian plazas like the ones in Times Square. The bill comes after scores of complaints in recent years over aggressive panhandling behavior, primarily from the costume characters pushing onlookers for tips. Well, and isn't it easier to do that when you have a costume on? People don't know who you are. They should be entertained. And by gosh, if they're entertained and you're spending your time as a panhandler entertaining people, they'd better give you a tip, right? It's their obligation, their responsibility to give you, this entitled panhandler, a tip. Goes back to my earlier discussion about moral standards. Okay. In the most recent incident, a man in a Spider-Man costume was accused of fighting with a tourist over a tip this past weekend and was arrested on an assault charge. Must have put his hands on someone. Other incidents in the past couple of years include another Spider-Man figure. What is it with Spider-Man? I mean, really? Come on. You're giving Spider-Man a bad name here. Keep your hands off. Keep your spidery little hands and legs off of people. So the Spider-Man figure in the same area punched a police officer trying to prevent aggressive solicitation. And a man dressed as the Cookie Monster attacked a 2-year-old child whose parents didn't offer up a tip. Yeah, a 2-year-old boy, I'm telling you, really responsible for what their parents do, and because that entitled Cookie Monster wanted his money. And now that 2-year-old kid who probably loved the Cookie Monster is no longer, for the rest of his life, when he sees Sesame Street and the Cookie Monster comes on, he's going to scream, totally have PTSD for the rest of his life thanks to some aggressive panhandler dressed as Cookie Monster. Oh my gosh. And so the council member, Daniel Garodnick, says, come to New York, duke it out with a superhero. Is that really what we want to be known for? I don't think the superheroes are your only problems there, Dan. I think there are probably other people who aren't dressed in costume that are probably panhandling people who may be, gosh, I don't know, robbing people. Maybe better concern yourself with those people as well. I know in some places you're not allowed to wear masks on your face in the States because they assume that you're going to rob a bank or something like that. Maybe you could talk about ordinances to do that. I mean, after all, I think New York probably has more rules and regulations than almost any other state. So all they need now is just a couple more rules and everything's going to be okay there, right? He says, we are not saying that all the people dressed in costume behave this way, but there is a consistent and ongoing issue that needs to be dealt with. So, what happens when you talk about costume characters? Well, they're going to unite, buddy. You better believe it. So, yesterday, I believe it was, Times Square was filled with people in costume, from superheroes to cartoon characters. Among them was Evan Laws in full Batman regalia. The 25-year-old, hey, that's probably a college graduate who doesn't have a job, so let's give him a break. The 25-year-old from Queens said he was there almost every day, and on a good day can make anywhere from $100 to $150 in tips, but that's dependent on him being able to move around. If he was forced to remain in one place, that would cut what he makes in half, and that would be, as he says, depressing. So now you're going to restrict this man from earning a living, and you wonder how many of these people are actually reporting any of these tips on their tax returns. I would guess, let's see, quick guess calculation, 0. I'm sure none of these people are filling out income tax and putting down the $150 tips per day that they're getting. Someone else said, I don't see why we should be penalized because of somebody else's aggression. And this is a union worker. This is Linwood McCoy, president of Transport Workers Union, Local 225, at which union members held up signs that read, don't kill union jobs. So a little ongoing saga that we're going to have, it seems, in New York until yet one more rule is put in place. One more law is put in place there for those people. You know, I remember one time being in San Francisco, and this guy wasn't costumed, but I think he thought he was a ticket taker because when we got off of the trolley, this man was standing over to one side telling people, come over here, you've got to get a new ticket. Let me validate the ticket for you. It's going to cost you, I think it was a couple of dollars that he wanted. And so we were tourists in San Francisco, so we walk over near the guy. So my husband's listening to what the guy is having to say, and I'm listening, and I'm taking a closer look. Taking a closer look. I see that this guy has a ticket that he's sort of cut in half, and he has a safety pin that he's run through the ticket, and he has just pinned the ticket onto his shirt, on the shirt pocket. So if you weren't really paying attention, this guy looked official. He had a white shirt, dark pants, and this ticket safety pinned to his shirt. And again, if you were in a hurry, no problem. You get him the money, he gives you a ticket, you're on your way. He gives you another ticket stub, you're on your way, ready to transfer and get to another trolley. Well, as I said, I take a closer look at it, and I see this, and I look at my husband, and I go, let's go. And he's like, what? And I said, let's go. So I kind of push my husband out of the way, move on over, and he's like, what's wrong with you? What are you doing? I'm just trying to get our new ticket. And I'm like, yeah, you're trying to pay a guy who is taking your money because he doesn't work for the trolley people. This guy is a scam artist. And sure enough, just as we move away, somebody must have alerted the police, and here they come, and they arrest this guy. And I'm sure he felt entitled, and I'm sure he felt what he was doing wasn't all that bad. He's just taking a couple of dollars and giving you a ticket that doesn't work, and you have to spend more money. And I'm sure that, again, maybe he should have had a better costume, and he could have said, hey, I'm just joking with you. I'm just one of the characters just pretending to be a ticket master. But I'm sure he probably got this little ticket from the police, and that one was real. But I bet if I were to go back there today, he'd be standing right back there in the same place with another scam similar to the one he was running, making more money until he's arrested the second time, or third time, or fourth time, or fifth. It doesn't really matter. And apparently, again, all he has to do, according to New York, go get yourself a costume, stand there, pretend to be passing out tickets, and ask people for money, and you're okay. It will be okay. So let's bring the New York laws to San Francisco. And now my final and favorite topic. That is homeschooling. You remember that the modern homeschooling movement was one of sort of like a revolt. It was so unheard of. And it began back in the 1970s and was typically led by graduates of the hippie generation. And that's according to an article in the Atlantic. So this hippie generation who saw public schools as too constrained and religious to its pop culture peak in the 80s and the 90s under conservative Christians who wanted more God and less evolution in the classroom, homeschoolers and parents had pushed aggressively against mainstream education. And you know I'm a big advocate of homeschool. I wish everybody homeschooled their kids. It would be a better world in my opinion. Not that the teachers are in public school are bad or anything like that, but their hands are pretty much tied, and then you get BS like Common Core, and it really ruins everything. Well, today there are more than 1.7 million homeschool kids in the United States, roughly double the number of those at the turn of the 21st century. Religious families, nearly exclusively Christian, make up more than 2/3 of them, and religious curricula and social groups dominate the community. Yes, great. Keep it going. In states where homeschoolers are required to be part of a larger umbrella school to meet government learning standards, Those networks are frequently organized by churches. For a small segment of parents and kids who opt out of traditional public schooling, something is changing. They're also opting out of religion. Oh, well, there's a big shocker. As I've talked to you many times on this show about how a lot of millennials especially, and others, unfortunately, are turning away from religion and from belief in God. And many are thinking that and saying that the Bible is just a farce. And so this is not surprising to see that this is occurring. But fortunately, we do also have people who are coming to God in droves. So kind of balances out, I suppose. Studies suggest that younger Americans are more likely than their older peers not to identify with any religion. Again, why is that? Because I believe they have not been taught and raised in that environment growing up. A lot of parents get a hands-off approach saying, oh, they'll figure out what they want to do, and they'll find their way as they get older. No, that's why parents are so necessary. You have to help them, teach them, train them, and even religion as they're growing up. And then when they're older, if they decide to do something different from you, when they're over 18, out of the house, they stay there till 30 now. But whenever they're out of the house, they can have their own religion. They can do their own thing. While about 1 in 5 of all Americans aren't affiliated with a religious group, the same is true of roughly 1 in 3 people in their 20s and 30s. And while atheists and agnostics account for just a sliver of the country's population, more than 2/3 of them are under 50. The number of those under 18 may also be growing. In recent years, advocacy groups have successfully launched a handful of secular clubs in high schools across the country. For some of today's kids, being non-religious isn't special, it's normal. Yeah, right. More and more people want to teach their particular set of values and beliefs in schools and not have the state do it. Okay, I agree with that. Don't have the state teach your kids what you want them to learn in the home. Religion is not a state-run program. Religion comes from the family. Now, one person here said, I never intended to homeschool. I'm an accidental homeschooler, you could say. Laura Smith, 49, who has homeschooled her 14-year-old son Aiden since August. Her elder son attends public high school in their California city, Long Beach, where the family lives in a modest suburban home about 20 minutes from the ocean. Then I got this kid. I guess he was handed to her somehow. The school system was sucking the life out of him. He had ADHD and dysgraphia, a disorder that makes it difficult for him to express himself in handwriting. Special education teacher, who she describes as emotionally abusive, didn't seem to be interested in helping him. So, I guess apparently she didn't believe in God, and Aiden didn't believe in God and started calling himself an atheist, so she took him out and homeschooled him without God. Well, I don't recommend that, but, at least he's being homeschooled. Too bad that he doesn't have God in the homeschool and the religion in the homeschool. I guess it is difficult for the atheist to find a non-Christian type curricula. Well, just wait around long enough and you'll probably be in a protected group just like everybody else who is in the minority, and you'll get whatever you want, and everybody else will no longer have Common Core. They'll have to turn to whatever education that you're trying to push at that time. I say that sarcastically, but again, in the world we live in, that's not so far-fetched to imagine that might happen. I commend all of you homeschooler parents out there. Great job that you're doing. So glad that you're teaching your children the principles that they should learn at home, the religious beliefs at home, the things that you want to make sure as parents that you maintain control over. And again, when the kids get older and they can make their own adult decisions, they have every right to make those decisions. But we need to, once again, come back and give children structure so that they understand what their choices are. And as they get older and become adults, they can actually make those choices on their own. But they have to learn how to make the right choices. And as parents, that's exactly what you're teaching them. So once again, I am so grateful that you are here on my segment, Knowles on the News. And until we meet again next week, take care of yourself. God bless.